Oklahoma water pressure dropped. Suddenly, plumbers found a body blocking the main line. On the morning of June 3, 2025, residents in a quiet residential block in Yukon, Oklahoma, began reporting an unusual problem. Faucets sputtered, toilets struggled to flush. Water pressure had dropped across several homes. At first, neighbors assumed it was a burst pipe or citywide maintenance. But when the issue persisted into the afternoon, a local contractor named Dave Morgan was called to investigate. Dave was a licensed plumber with over 20 years of experience. He arrived around 3:15 p.m., greeted the homeowner, and followed the main line path toward the street. Using a ground microphone and pressure monitor, he began testing the underground system. Everything appeared normal until he reached the central cleanout access behind 216 Pecan Grove Lane. The readings spiked. Something was blocking the flow deep inside the shared sewer main. Suspecting roots or debris, Dave fed a sewer camera into the pipe. At approximately 20 feet in, the screen froze. A shadow passed. Then the image sharpened. He stopped breathing. Hair, wet matted strands, tangled with what looked like pale swollen flesh. He yanked the camera out and called 911. What emergency services would find beneath that cul-de-sac? Would unearth the darkest secret the neighborhood had ever known. What they pulled from the pipe would haunt the entire county. Dave Morgan had seen his share of strange things over the years. Burst septic tanks, nests of rats, even a python someone's neighbor lost slithering through storm drains. But nothing had ever stopped him in his tracks like what he saw on his monitor that day. He stood frozen by the curb for a few seconds, staring at the screen, hoping he had seen it wrong. But the camera had recorded everything, a mass of something soft and flesh-colored glistening in the camera's light. Tangled strands of what could only be human hair. His mouth went dry. At 3:42 p.m., his call to 911 was calm on the surface, but anyone listening could hear the tightness in his voice. I think there is something or someone in the main line. I saw hair, a scalp. It might be a body. Within 15 minutes, the first patrol car from the Yukon Police Department arrived. Officer Rachel Ivers stepped out and greeted Dave, who led her to the van. She watched the footage in silence, her eyes narrowing. Without a word, she stepped away and called for backup. Meanwhile, several neighbors had begun to gather. The presence of a police cruiser and a plumbing van was unusual, but not alarming. Yet the look on Officer Ivers' face made people nervous. One neighbor, 67-year-old Janice Delaney, asked what was going on. Ivers simply said, "Please stay back, ma'am." By 4:30 p.m., police had cordoned off the access point. More officers arrived. Then an unmarked forensic van pulled up. That was when the mood shifted from curiosity to unease. Dave stood across the street, arms crossed, trying to make sense of what he had found. His mind kept replaying the camera feed. He could still see the slow sway of the hair in the stagnant water. He could still feel the chill creeping down his spine. A group of detectives from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation (OSBI) soon joined the scene. The camera was replayed again, this time on a larger screen inside one of the forensic vehicles. A decision was made. They needed to excavate the pipe. At 5:15 p.m., a backhoe arrived. The operation moved carefully, with every inch of soil removed under the watch of forensics. Dave watched from a distance, not speaking. The sun had begun to dip lower, casting long shadows across the street. The air had changed. People were whispering now. Children had been called inside. Then at 6:02 p.m., the digging stopped. They had exposed the segment of pipe. Technicians in white hazmat suits moved forward, removing the cover and shining lights inside. One of them crouched, peered into the darkness, then immediately stood back and signaled to his team. Dave could not see what they saw, but he knew. One of the forensic team members slowly reached in and pulled out something small, translucent, bloated, and unmistakably human. A hand. Not a bone, not an old medical dummy, a real hand. The homeowner who had called Dave to fix the water pressure was now sitting on the front steps of her porch, trembling. Her name was Clara Richmond, 41 years old, a single mother of 2 teenage boys. She clutched her phone but did not dial anyone. She just kept muttering, "This cannot be real. Not here. Not in my house." She had lived there for nearly 10 years. Her ex-husband used to visit, but they had not spoken in months. Her sons were staying with relatives in Tulsa for the week. Detectives approached her and asked if she had ever noticed anything unusual in the past month. Any foul smells, strange noises, or ground movement. She shook her head. Only the low water pressure the last few days. I thought it was the city. By sunset, it became clear the body had been lodged in the shared main pipe that served 4 houses. The decomposition had blocked the flow, and as pressure built, so did the chances of someone discovering it. That person just happened to be Dave Morgan. He sat on the curb long after the sun had gone down, long after the body had been removed and placed in a white bag zipped up and carried to the medical examiner's van. A thin stream of fluid had leaked from the bag and was now soaking into the dirt beneath the tree by the sidewalk. Dave had come to fix a pipe. Instead, he had opened the door to a crime scene. That night, as the backhoe filled in the hole and the tape fluttered gently in the warm wind, Officer Ivers walked past Dave and said quietly, "You saved us from something much worse." He looked up, his eyes heavy. "No," he said, "I just found what was already there." And somewhere beneath the calm surface of that neighborhood, everyone knew someone had gone to great lengths to make sure the truth stayed buried. But it had not worked. By dawn on June 4, 2025, the quiet cul-de-sac of Pecan Grove Lane was no longer a neighborhood. It had become a sealed crime scene. Police cruisers lined the street. Yellow tape fluttered across driveways and mailboxes. A mobile forensic command trailer was parked near the hydrant. Officers stood at every access point, turning away reporters, neighbors, and even delivery trucks. Nobody without credentials passed through the perimeter. At 7:12 a.m., the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation officially took over the case. They set up floodlights and unrolled cables for power tools. A drone buzzed overhead, scanning the site from multiple angles. Everything was documented. The body recovered the night before had been sent to the state coroner's lab in Oklahoma City, but on-site analysis continued. Investigators reopened the section of pipe to inspect surrounding areas. Soil samples were bagged. The entire segment was removed and loaded onto a hazmat-secured vehicle. Forensics teams dressed in full white Tyvek suits began combing the area. They sprayed luminol on nearby ground and used portable UV lights to detect traces of biological material. Within an hour, something caught their attention. Faint blood traces, long dried, appeared on the edge of a storm drain that fed into the sewer main. It was not just decomposition fluid from the pipe. This was fresh transfer, smudged, as if something or someone had been dragged. Inside the command trailer, lead forensic technician, Dr. Aileen Kershaw, reviewed initial findings from the body. She dictated her report in a flat clinical tone, but her eyes revealed unease. The body was female, estimated age mid to late 20s, signs of significant trauma. Post-mortem interval suggests she has been deceased for approximately 19 to 23 days. Severe decomposition, skin slippage, limbs fractured post-mortem likely to fit into the pipe. Saw marks present on both femurs and clavicle. Right wrist broken during compression. She paused. There are ligature marks on both ankles and wrists. Fingernails broken, some missing entirely. Blunt force trauma to the left parietal lobe. Facial features unrecognizable. She looked up and quietly added, "This was not an accident." By noon, the entire block had been canvassed. Neighbors were interviewed individually, escorted to a temporary questioning tent set up near the entrance to the neighborhood. Most had nothing to offer. No one had seen or heard anything suspicious. Except one. 11-year-old Max Delaney, who lived 3 houses down from the Richmond home, told a female detective something odd. "I thought I saw a raccoon in the alley 2 weeks ago," he said. "It was dragging something. I told my mom, but she said not to go near it." When pressed for more details, Max hesitated. "I don't think it was a raccoon," he added softly. "It had shoes." The detective jotted it down but did not react. Kids exaggerate, she thought. Still, everything was noted. Meanwhile, a cadaver dog named Iris was led along the rear fences of the 4 homes connected to the sewer line. She stopped twice, once behind the Richmond property, and again behind the house directly next to it. Both times she sat and whined. Behind the Richmond house, a worn section of grass revealed what looked like a faint depression in the ground. Forensics moved in. They began digging manually, inch by inch, brush by brush. By 3:15 p.m., they uncovered a shallow pit with signs of disturbance rocks, layered awkwardly plastic fibers stuck to roots, and buried just beneath the surface duct tape and strands of long brown hair. It matched the victim. Someone had tried to conceal part of the crime behind the house, then changed their mind, or panicked, or had no time. Back in the lab, dental records had been requested from multiple clinics in the Oklahoma City area. No ID had yet been made, but the woman's molars contained a ceramic crown, a detail only done in the last 5 years by a particular dental office in Bethany. A match was likely coming. By 5:30 p.m., rain began to fall over Pecan Grove Lane. The floodlights were turned on early. Officers moved quietly beneath tarps and umbrellas, their boots caked in red Oklahoma mud. Detectives reviewed the storm drain system, tracing how a body could have been placed behind a house pushed into the runoff and dragged by pressure into the shared line. It was possible, but not easy. Whoever did this knew the area. They knew the pipe layout. And they knew time was running out before the body caused problems. Inside the command trailer, Dr. Kershaw removed her gloves and stared at the evidence board. A map of the neighborhood had been marked with red pins. Only one location had two: the Richmond house, the blood, the dog alert, and a missing section of concrete near the back porch. As the rain fell harder, a technician whispered to her, "We just found bleach stains in the garage, a lot of it." That night, as the crew packed up and covered the pit, one detective spoke aloud to no one in particular. "This body floated to the surface because someone made a mistake." Another detective, without turning around, replied, "No, someone thought this was enough, that a sewer pipe would erase everything." But it had not. Now the hunt for a name and a killer was just beginning. Day 1, June 4, 2025. By nightfall, the medical examiner's office confirmed what investigators had feared. The body found in the sewer line was human female and exhibited clear signs of homicide. The initial forensic report was grim, broken bones, evidence of restraint trauma to the head, and clear attempts to dismember and compress the body. The victim's dental crown provided a crucial lead. The ceramic work had been completed by Dr. Lena Brooks at a boutique dental office in Bethany, Oklahoma, just outside Yukon. Cross-referencing records, they found a match by 9:12 p.m. Her name was Monica Ray Callahan, age 28, single, no children. Recently moved from Tulsa to Oklahoma City for work. She had been reported missing on May 13, 2025, by her sister, who told police Monica had never missed a call or failed to return a text until that day. That missing persons report had gone quiet. Now Monica Callahan was dead. Day 2, June 5, 2025. Detectives canvassed Monica's apartment. It was still locked. Her car was still in the garage. Her mail had piled up. Her cell phone, however, was not there. It had last pinged off a cell tower near Pecan Grove Lane on the night of May 14th. They pulled phone records, hoping to triangulate her movements. A strange pattern emerged. Her phone had remained in the same 3-block radius for nearly 7 hours on May 14th, between 7:32 p.m. and 2:13 a.m. before it went dark. The address that placed her phone closest to the epicenter: 214 Pecan Grove Lane, next door to the Richmond house. Detectives knocked on the door of 214 Pecan Grove at 10:17 a.m. It was owned by a man named Dennis Larimore, a 52-year-old former contractor who had been on medical disability since 2019. Dennis answered the door in sweatpants and a stained shirt. He appeared disoriented, but compliant. "Did you know Monica Callahan?" a detective asked. "No," Dennis replied, "never heard of her." They asked if he would mind if they walked the yard to confirm storm drain access. He hesitated, then agreed. In the back, officers noted an open drainage grate behind the garage. It fed directly into the same sewer line where the body had been discovered. There were faint signs of digging. A portion of the gravel near the drain appeared recently disturbed. But no physical evidence had yet tied Dennis to the case. Not yet. Day 3, June 6, 2025. Police secured a warrant to search both the Richmond home and Larimore's property. Clara Richmond, still shaken by the events, complied. She allowed full access to her home and backyard. Officers documented bleach stains in the garage, a cracked portion of the concrete patio, and scuff marks leading to a low storm drain entrance near her trash bins. But then came a break: camera footage. Clara's doorbell camera had long been inactive due to battery failure, but a neighbor 2 doors down had an active ring system. It captured motion-triggered footage every time someone passed by the streetlight. On the night of May 14th at 9:48 p.m., the camera recorded a woman walking down the sidewalk, head down, phone in hand. At 10:01 p.m., the camera caught a second figure, a tall man following behind her at a distance. His face never turned toward the camera, but the gait, the size, and the limp on his left leg were unmistakable. Detectives matched that limp to Dennis Larimore, who had injured his hip during a roofing accident 5 years earlier. They confronted Dennis with the footage. He said nothing, but his hands began to tremble. Day 4, June 7th, 2025. Using a laser grid scanner, police mapped the path from Monica's likely point of contact to the sewer line. They believed Monica had been lured or coerced into one of the homes, likely 214 or 216 Pecan Grove. Forensics returned to Larimore's property with luminol and UV lights. Inside the garage, they found trace blood near the workbench. The stains had been wiped, but not fully erased. Beneath a stack of plywood, they also found a burned plastic tote, partially melted. The smell inside was pungent bleach plastic and something else. DNA results would take days, but the circumstantial case was building. Back at the lab, techs finally accessed a digital backup of Monica's smartwatch. The data had been preserved in her cloud account. Her last recorded heartbeat was at 10:19 p.m. on May 14th, 1 minute before her phone signal vanished. Day 5, June 8th, 2025. Officers re-questioned Clara Richmond. She broke down in tears. "I do not know that man well," she said, referring to Dennis. "He helped fix my fence once. That was it. But he came by a few times after that. Always late. Sometimes he stood near the back fence and smoked. I thought he was just lonely." She paused, then added, "I told him he could walk through my yard if he needed. I did not know. I did not know." She looked at the investigators and said one sentence that chilled them. He said once, "This neighborhood buries its secrets well. I thought it was a joke." What had started as a plumbing call had now become a manhunt, and detectives were beginning to realize Monica's death may not have been an isolated act of violence. It may have been the final mistake of a man who thought nobody would ever dig deep enough to find what he had done. By June 9th, 2025, the evidence was mounting, but a clear motive remained elusive. Monica Ray Callahan had no known ties to Yukon, Oklahoma. Her life was centered in Oklahoma City. She worked remotely for a tech firm, lived alone, and rarely ventured out after dark. Her digital footprint was light: no dating apps, no local friends, no known enemies. So why had her final movements brought her into the orbit of Dennis Larimore, a disabled contractor living in near isolation? Detectives began digging deeper, not into Monica's past, but Dennis's. They requested his cell records, bank transactions, and social media archives. What they found on June 10th changed the tone of the investigation completely. Dennis had once lived in Tulsa. From 2015 to 2018, he had worked as a subcontractor for a mid-size residential firm. He had been laid off after multiple complaints of aggressive behavior and missed deadlines. His supervisor at the time, Karen Callahan, Monica's mother, she had passed away in 2021, but the connection was irrefutable. Monica was her only daughter. It was not a random encounter. This was deliberate. Detectives presented this information to Monica's sister, Rachel Callahan, who had filed the original missing persons report. Rachel went still when they said the name. "Dennis Larimore," she whispered. "That man. Mom fired him. He came to our house once. I remember he yelled outside the front door. Mom never told us why." When asked if Monica would have known who he was, Rachel nodded. Not well, but she would have remembered the name. She hated how he made our mom feel. That night, police brought Dennis in for formal questioning. He did not ask for a lawyer. He said nothing for the first 27 minutes. Then, unprompted, he said, "She remembered me." Detective Sarah Hastings leaned forward. "You knew her mother, didn't you?" His eyes were bloodshot. He nodded slowly. "She got me blacklisted. I lost everything. People stopped hiring me. I had to move out here just to breathe. And then one night I saw her, the daughter, spitting image of her mother." He smiled faintly, then said, "I thought maybe God sent her to see what she did." Detective Hastings asked, "Did you lure her?" He shook his head. "No, she was walking. I just followed." "What did you say to her?" she asked. He looked down at his hands, cracked and scarred. She said, "Do I know you?" I said, "Not yet." Dennis claimed they talked in his garage. But the physical evidence told a darker story. He had zip ties in the burned tote, tape, a stained mattress pad, a section of stained plywood leaning against the wall. His story softened the truth, but it did not erase it. Monica's autopsy confirmed a sharp blow to the back of the skull, likely from a heavy tool. Investigators searched Dennis's toolbox. A framing hammer was missing. When confronted with this, Dennis's mask cracked. He said quietly, "She tried to run. I didn't mean to hit her that hard." Then, shaking, he added, "But when I did, it got quiet, and I could think again." Detectives now understood this was not about robbery. This was not about sex. This was resentment, buried rage that had festered for almost a decade. Dennis believed Monica's mother ruined his life. When he saw Monica by chance in Yukon walking alone near dusk, he followed her. He believed it was fate. He believed he had the right to explain himself. But it ended in murder. And what he did after the killing revealed something even colder. Forensics determined Monica had died between 10:18 and 10:22 p.m. on May 14th. Her body was left in the garage for at least 2 days. Neighbors reported a chemical smell, but it was dismissed as cleaning products. On May 16th, Dennis attempted to dispose of her using a plastic tote, but decomposition had already begun. He panicked. He tried to burn the remains in a small fire pit. When that failed, he wrapped the body in plastic, broke the limbs using a crowbar, and forced it into the storm drain. He used a power saw to compress her into sections. He wore swim goggles to keep blood from his eyes. It took him 3 nights. No one saw him. No one heard her scream. But one line stayed with investigators, even as Dennis grew quiet again. She said something before I hit her. She said, "I will call the police." Like I was the one doing something wrong. The truth was out. It was not a stranger who killed Monica. It was a ghost from her mother's past. Someone who had waited in silence, stewing in bitterness, waiting for someone to blame. Monica never saw it coming. She had taken a walk through a quiet neighborhood and crossed paths with the one person in the world who had never forgotten her last name. The confession came in waves. It was not one clean statement. It unfolded over several interviews with hours of silence in between. But each time Dennis Larimore sat beneath the harsh fluorescent light in the OSB interrogation room, something inside him loosened, as though he had been waiting to be caught. The man across the table was no longer defiant. His shoulders sagged. His voice grew softer. His words sometimes trailed off into whispers, as if saying them out loud brought him shame he had never expected to feel. "I did not plan it," he began on June 11, 2025. "I swear to God I did not plan it." Detective Sarah Hastings sat quietly, letting the moment stretch. Dennis looked at his hands. They trembled slightly. "I was walking the block. I saw her by the stop sign. She had her earbuds in. I do not know what came over me, but I followed. I just wanted to talk. Just to tell her." "Tell her what?" the detective asked gently. "That her mother ruined everything," he said. "She made one complaint, and I could not get hired anywhere after that. Said I made the girls uncomfortable. That I stared too much. That I was a problem. But I was just trying to keep my job." He looked up, his face pale. And there she was. Monica. Looked just like her. I thought, maybe this was my moment to be heard. He admitted to approaching Monica near the entrance of Pecan Grove Lane. She had paused her music when he called out her name. She said, "How do you know me?" I said, "I worked for your mom." She looked confused, then scared. Monica had backed away. She told him she was calling the police. That was when something in Dennis snapped. I grabbed her arm. She screamed. I panicked. I shoved her, and she fell, hit her head on the corner of the fence post. According to Dennis, she went still but was not dead. He dragged her half-conscious into his garage. He said he planned to let her go, that he paced back and forth for almost an hour, not knowing what to do. But when she came to and tried again to run, he stopped her, permanently. "I hit her with the hammer," he whispered. "I just wanted her to be quiet." His voice cracked, but she would not stop crying. Dennis said the next 3 days were a blur. He did not sleep. He drank. He thought about calling the police, but every time he approached the phone, fear took over. He believed no one would believe it was an accident. He believed they would look at his past and say this had been coming all along. "I saw what I did, and I thought I have to make her disappear." He used a handsaw to dismember the body, though he could not bring himself to say the word. He said he cut her up. He wrapped the sections in plastic sheeting and duct tape. When his initial attempts at burning failed, he tried the storm drain. "It took 3 tries," he said, barely audible now. "She got stuck. I had to push with a rod, like trash." He put his face in his hands. "I did not even bury her like a person." During a later interview, Dennis asked if Monica's family knew. When Detective Hastings told him yes, that Monica had been identified and that her sister had been the one to push for a wider search, he nodded slowly. "She deserved better," he said. "That girl, she did not even know who I was. I thought she would understand, or that she would yell or scream or do something. But she just looked afraid, like I was nothing." Then he leaned forward and whispered a line the detectives would never forget. "I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would go away, but it didn't." He began to cry, but it was not remorse that filled the room. It was the crushing weight of a wasted life, a ruined one, and the irreversible destruction of another. The officers in the observation room were silent. Some turned away. Because what they were hearing was not just a confession, it was a slow, unraveling collapse of a man who had convinced himself he had a right to be heard, even if it meant taking someone's life to do it. Dennis Larimore was officially charged on June 12, 2025 with first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice. He waived his right to a jury trial and entered a plea agreement that would avoid the death penalty. But in every courtroom appearance, he refused to look Monica's sister in the eye. And though he claimed regret, he never once apologized. The trial was over quickly. There was no cross-examination, no need for witnesses to relive the forensic horrors that had already been written into every page of the case file. On August 8, 2025, Dennis Larimore was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for Monica's family, justice felt hollow. Her sister Rachel spoke at the sentencing hearing. Her voice was steady, cold even, but there was no mistaking the fury buried beneath her words. She was walking to clear her mind. That is all. Just a walk. Just a few blocks of fresh air. She never made it back. And now every time I walk past someone on the street, I wonder what are they carrying. Monica's remains were cremated. Her ashes were scattered near Keystone Lake, a place she once called the only spot in Oklahoma that feels like peace. But her bedroom in Oklahoma City was left untouched for months. Her favorite mug still sat on the shelf unwashed. Her dog, a small black terrier named Clover, continued to wait by the door every evening at 6:00 p.m., the time Monica used to come home. Rachel eventually donated most of Monica's things, but the closet remained closed. I cannot open it, she said during an interview in September. It still smells like her shampoo, like lavender. I am not ready to let that go. In Yukon, the residents of Pecan Grove Lane tried to move forward. The yellow tape was long gone. The soil where the sewer line had been dug up was replanted with grass and decorative stones. But beneath the cosmetic repair, the trauma remained. Children were kept inside more often. One neighbor installed floodlights along her entire fence line. Another sold their house quietly and moved away. The woman who had first called the plumber, Clara Richmond, attended grief counseling twice a week. Though she had no part in the crime, she felt a weight she could not shake. She died in the dark, less than 30 feet from where my kids sleep, Clara once said. And I did not know. I should have known. No one blamed her, but Clara blamed herself. As the one-year anniversary approached in May 2026, an anonymous donor funded the installation of a small memorial bench at the end of the cul-de-sac beneath a weeping willow tree. The plaque read, "In memory of Monica Ray Callahan, May 3, 1997, May 14, 2025, you were not forgotten." The city allowed the memorial, quietly, no ribbon cutting, no speech, just a place for silence. A place where the people of the neighborhood could sit and remember the night they learned something terrifying. That evil does not always come crashing through doors. Sometimes it waits, unseen, quiet. Sometimes it lives next door. Months later, in a recorded prison interview, Dennis was asked what he would say to Monica's family if given the chance. He looked at the camera for a long time, then said only, "It is too late. There is nothing left to say." The screen went black. Rachel, now living in Tulsa, still carries Monica's photo in her wallet. She still checks the weather in Oklahoma City every morning. She still pauses whenever she hears the soft buzz of a streetlight turning on at dusk. And every year on May 14 she lights a lavender candle. She never forgets. None of them do. The body was buried, but the nightmare never left.